Yo YouTube, it's Evie. Been getting a lot of questions lately regarding my turf tracker spreadsheet, so I just wanted to put together an informative video on how to set it up and how to use my turf tracker sheet. This is expanded off of G-Man's GDD spreadsheet on the lawnforum.com, and also some spreadsheets from OSU Turfman on the lawn forum, and also from the Turf Hacker website, which is no longer around. So to get started, we're going to open up the link that's down in the description. You're going to go to File, make a copy. Feel free to name this whatever you want. I changed mine to be Turf Tracker on my own drive, but you can name yours whatever you want. You'll have to keep this within Google Sheets to properly use the APIs. You can't download this to Excel, just a heads up on that. So hit make a copy, and then we will go to the setup tab. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to get your longitude and latitude. So to that, we're going to go to Google Maps. You're going to scroll, find your house. Say I live next to Trader Joe's. I'm going to put my pin down, just a single click. And down here at the bottom, you can see your longitude and latitude. So you're going to enter that in. Put that on the spreadsheet. Next up, you have your crop coefficient. So if you have cool season grass, you're going to do 0.8, and if you have warm season grass, 0.6. You'll set your first day of the year. If that's after 2022 here, you'll have to change that. Your GDD threshold, we can come back to that later, but if you do know that for tracking PGR, you can set that here. Your yard size in 1,000 square feet. If you do not know this, you can go to measuremylawn.com and it'll bring up a satellite image that you can get a close estimate of what your lawn size is. And then you come back here and enter that back in as per 1,000 square feet. So I have roughly 6,500 square feet, so I enter that as 6.5. Precipitation, I prefer inches, so I set this to 1, but if you want milliliters or metric, you can set it to 25.4. And then you would, for clippings returned, you do 1 for yes or 0 for no. Next up, we need to choose our API keys. There's a number of API keys. There's some descriptions here about how to do it. I suggest using OpenWeather. I really like Weather Underground for tracking weather. However, their API requires to have your own weather station, which I do not have, so I'm not able to use their API. I believe that Dark Skies API is also good, but I believe they're discontinuing it in 2023, so I chose to use the OpenWeather API. There's instructions on the lawn forum on G-Man's thread for his log GDD ET spreadsheet if you want to go there for any additional help with setting up the APIs. For now, I'm going to show you how I use OpenWeather. So we're going to go to openweathermap.org. You're going to hit sign in. For you, you'll need to create an account, and you can just use the free account for this. We're not going to be doing that many API calls, so the free one should suffice. And once you're signed in successfully, you can click your API keys, and we're going to copy our API. Go back to the spreadsheet and paste that in the OpenWeather API key value. The last part is we have to set up the script. So at the top, you're going to go to Extensions, App Script. If this is your first time, there may be some permissions that you'll have to accept. Then you'll go to Triggers, and in the bottom right, there's Add Trigger. For the function, you're going to select which API key you use. So for OpenWeather, it's going to be get OW. Then for event source, you're going to do time driven. Select a day timer. And if you're using dark sky, you'll pick 5 to 6 a.m. Otherwise, all the rest of them can be midnight to 1 a.m. Hit save. This will take a few moments. Then you'll just need to sign in. It'll say Google hasn't verified this app. Hit advanced and hit go get weather data. And you'll want to allow. Now back to the spreadsheet. Go to File, Settings, and select your time zone. So I'm Central, but if you're different, you'll want to change that, and then save that settings. So then it knows to update at midnight your time. Now the weather forecast and weather history tabs will start updating daily with the information. For now, we want to delete out all of my data, so we can copy all of this and do Shift Control down, then either right click and delete, or you can use the delete key. Same thing for weather forecast. You can delete these and just leave the dates. Now all your fresh data is set to populate those two tabs, which will then also flow into the GDD GPETO spreadsheet. I will note that there are ways to get historical data, but I'm not going to go through that for time's sake. The next tab I want to show is the Climate tab right after the Setup tab. This is a climate appraisal form from PaceTurf. For this, you go to weatherbase.com and you can grab your average temperatures and rainfalls and paste them into the spreadsheet. Again, note here, if you're returning clippings, for cool season or warm season, you'll have different variables here. And then your maximum N per month per 1,000 square feet. You can select how much you want to set. I keep mine at 0.55 because I'm in a moderate range, but I know others have gone down as low as 0.2 all the way up to 0.8 or 0.9 for lots of growth. But just remember that the more N that you push, the more you'll likely be mowing. I won't go into a ton of detail since this is described on the PaceTurf website, but this shows your monthly growth potential based on the historical weather data that you input, and it will tell you your growth potential of your grass based on that data. It should tell you when you should be fertilizing maybe more versus less. Say here in this month where I have 100%, you can see that my N is much higher versus say April when I have very little growth. On the GDD GPETO, you can delete either cool season or warm season. You just select these columns and delete which one. So for instance, I'm cool season, so I'm just going to select and delete these columns. All the ones that say warm season for me, since I have cool season turf. If you're warm season, you'll do the opposite. This whole tab is updated from the other tabs. However, it's good for looking at like temperatures, humidity, your GDD if you're tracking that, your growth potential, your Smith-Kearns dollar spot, evapotranspiration, your precipitation, supplemental irrigation, temps in Fahrenheit, and your disease pressure. All these numbers translate over to the charts and graphs tab, so you'll see these being populated as data becomes available. On the mowing/clipping tracker tab, this is where you can log your mowing times. You can measure clippings in liters. You can measure your stimp, and you can add any notes. For instance, I recently have been mowing like a double checkerboard pattern, which takes longer, so I just note that in this notes column. And these all flow over to the charts tab as well. So there's your annual mowing, your stimp over time, and your clippings removed in liters. You can delete out this data so you can start fresh. The 2022 fertilizer logbook. Here's where you can track and plan your fertilizer applications. Just make sure that you're typing these dates in order. In the soil reports values down below, you can fill this in for your ppm values if you use like a Malik 3 or similar test that you're going off of for your soil. For the products here, say I want to do a new app on 1010, I would select my product here. You can see that there's a big list here. I can start typing, let's say, ammonium sulfate, and I have a couple ammonium sulfates here that I can choose from. You then select your pounds or ounces. So if I'm doing this as a spray, I may want to dissolve the ammonium sulfate in ounces. And then your app, you would either enter this in ounces or pounds depending on what you chose. So I'm doing 4 ounces, that'd be 0.5 N, and the rest is calculated out. This is a good way just to track like your annual NPK rates, your total cost for these applications if you have your costs updated correctly, your average cost per 1,000 square feet per application, that sort of thing. It also predicts your new parts per million, how they will change based on how much you've been applying over the year. And for these products, these come from the Products tab. So this is a manual database that I collected. If there's something that's not on here or you need something updated, you need to manually type that in. So if this bag of 19 changed to $70, you would type 70 here. If it's now become 15, you could change that there as well. You don't have to type everything in. I know a lot of this stuff is kind of extra, but some things that I've wanted to track over the years. I will note that some of these costs are also probably outdated based on when I actually updated this. So you may need to update those yourself. We've touched on the next 3 tabs, the GDD, the forecast, and the history tabs. So next up is control products. This you can use for herbicide rates, linking to your labels, your costs, either per app or per 1,000, any temperature restrictions, that kind of thing. Again, you're just going to have to manually add it, but it's pretty handy for keeping track of stuff. And also like if you know that it needs a surfactant or if it doesn't. Tenacity and Prodiamine dosage. This is from G-Man Spreadsheet. You can use this for converting like grams to ounces to pounds or milliliters to tablespoons to ounces, etc. Those types of herbicides that require much less amount of product. Soil deficit. This I mainly use for keeping track of my soil tests here. I would enter them in. It also will give you how much you should be applying to get towards your MLSN numbers. However, I haven't verified that this is purely accurate since this again is from the spreadsheet, which was experimental at the time. NPK Mixer and Filler. I get questions on how much urea per se is in a fertilizer blend or different sources, how much they're in each blend. And so this is what I use to figure them out. Here you can change the source. So you can see here I have urea, MOP, and DAP, and a little bit of AMS, and that gets me like a 10-10-10 with 7% sulfur. And then these weights are just as a percentage. You can change this. Say instead of filler, they want to use manure. You can see how much that would change the mix. Or if instead of doing filler, they use that difference for urea, then you all of a sudden have a 24-10-10 instead of a 10-10-10. Sulfur and calcium, you'll have to manually enter those in as they don't link up. But these sources from the drop down, those come from the next tab, which is fertilizer codes and sources. You shouldn't have to change anything here. This is just for reference values. I've also included a chart for the potential acidity for something like AMS is acidic, while calcium nitrate is more basic. Next tab is sprayer wand. I get questions on my sprayer setup, so I've listed my parts here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, but this is just kind of for reference. Lastly is useful links. These are my go-to resources for referencing or learning more about turfgrass. You'll see lots of universities here, not necessarily all related to warm season since I'm more cool season focused, but they're all extremely credible sources that you can dive into and get more info from. Lastly, I will note on the weather history tab that if you're keeping track of your supplemental irrigation in inches, you would just put that here. So let's say I watered 1/4 of an inch, I'd put this here. And also if I'm spraying PGR, I would enter that as a 50 in this column. And that would reset my GDD on this tab. So my GDD would be building up and then reset back down to 0. So you would know when to reapply towards your target. As an example, here's how I use my spreadsheet. So typically I'll be looking at like what my growth potential is. You can see the past couple days has been really high. I might be dipping down the next couple days, but relatively staying above that 70% mark. My GDD threshold, you can see that I reapplied PGR here on 7/22, and I haven't reapplied since. My disease pressure has been moderate, I would say. It's not necessarily jumping up and sustaining above the 150 mark, if you know that rule. Same thing with Smith-Kern's dollar spot model. Usually just come through and look at these graphs as reference. A lot of what I'm keeping track of is my mowing time. So I'll put my mowing start and end time. It'll tell me my minutes, enter my square feet. If I'm keeping track of any clippings or if I measure any stimp, I've only done that once. Then the other thing that I really like this for is for my fertilizer logbook, so I know exactly what I applied when. And then also the useful links I use a lot for referencing different pieces of material. If you got any other questions, leave them down below and I'll do my best to help you out. Hope you guys enjoy using this.